be all right. Oh, there we go. There we go. Now we're good. Okay. All right, guys. So today is titled Turning Savings into Income, the retirement strategy most people miss. Again, this is Kyle Pursley, your host with the TruYou Unfiltered podcast. Join us for valuable tips to enhance various facets of your life's journey with our guest here, Gerard, a former U.S. or current, I don't know if you're current U.S., former Marine Corps veteran. Oh, he's a veteran,
Once a
financial
Marine,
professional.
always a Marine.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. And a financial professional as we dive into retirement strategies, tax planning, and how to turn savings into reliable income you can outlive. That's awesome because my dad was a veteran. Appreciate the veterans, appreciate your service, my guy. And what made you go into just like the Marines or maybe a different branch, if you don't mind me asking?
I went growing up in New Jersey, I knew I never wanted to go to college. Just wasn't my thing. And in New Jersey, we have cold winters. Maybe not Chicago cold, but I would construct some neighbors of mine paving, asphalt roads. And every winter we get laid off, and you had to go on unemployment, and it was miserable. And the guys that were older than me, like 10 years older, they were miserable. So I said, let me look at joining the service. And I remember walking through the Armed Forces building, and the Marine Corps was the last one. That's where I was going. And it's funny because the Navy guy pulled me in, and he's trying to tell me, like, you could be a SEAL and all this stuff. And I was like, I want to be a Marine. See you later. Went in the Marine Corps, signed up. I had a great recruiter, awesome recruiter. He was motivated. He was honest. And, that's a thankless job. Those guys work like 12, 14 hours a day. So got in the DEP program, what they called delayed entry program. And I wanted to go as soon as possible because, you hear the guys like, the school that they're going to for their MOS, which is your military occupational specialty in the Marine Corps, your general. Some guys don't get that school for like 10 months, and then they find another job, they have a girlfriend, they don't want to go. So I wanted to go as soon as possible, and I think it was like 3 weeks till my school opened up, and then I went.
What's funny? My dad was like when he wanted to start in like he went to the army branch, is what he ended up doing. But he was like, man, I just wanted to get out of the house. And that was the best
Yeah.
way
Well,
possible.
that's another thing too. Growing up in New Jersey wasn't a bad place. Now it's crazy expensive, but back
Mhm.
then, I wanted to go to other places, and that was a good opportunity to go out to see other places, the country, the world, and that's what we did.
And so, what as far as like going seeing the world, right? Because I love traveling myself too. When you all got deployed, is there any space that maybe of like that highlights when I say you traveled the world for? What's like a location you had to go
Yeah, I would
to?
say, Okinawa was fun in Japan. So, it was fun. And then I got to go to the mainland for 2 weeks for another school and went to Tokyo, Yokohama, and it was pretty cool. It was very crowded, and this is back when I went, geez, what years were those? 94 and 95. So, look up, how many years ago? And, the Japanese people were nice. They were friendly, and a little adjustment to their food. And I remember when we were in base at Fatima was the base we're on, and we went down the hill. There was five of us, one of these all-you-can-eat places, and we went
Oh,
there 2 days straight. And the second day, a lady comes out. She goes, "You don't eat no more. You eat too much." So, but that was a lot of fun. But yeah,
typical
it's what you make of it.
Americans, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I had a great time in Japan. I did two 6 month punts, what they call a 6 month punt. So,
What did you end up going to? Like you went, you said you went to school a couple times. So maybe I missed it, but like, what were you going for
so,
school for? What were you doing for the Marines?
so whatever your MO is, so first of all, if anyone's listening and you're going to go into the military, make sure you do not go in open contract. Make sure you get a guaranteed contract, whether it doesn't matter the branch. Because like if you go in the Navy or the Marine Corps open contract, they'll put you where they need you. They need you, painting ships or cooking in the mess hall. That's what you're going to do. And I love cooking, but I wouldn't go in the military for cooking. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
yeah, so you have to whatever school you're in, you go to what they call an A school, whatever that is. For me, that was ordnance. It was all kinds of small gun ammo, chaff flare, bombs, rockets, missiles, that kind of stuff. And then you, once you're done with that, you go to uh, MCI, Marine Combat Training. So you got 3 days of living in the whatever you want to call it, the out in the woods. They teach you how to live out in the woods 30 days. And so once you're done there, then you go to, depending on how good you do in your school, they have what's called I forget what they call like a wish list or something, and you put the top places where you want to go. I wanted to go to Pendleton, Hawaii, or El Corvo at the time, and I got Pendleton, which was absolutely wonderful. Loved Pendleton. Still love getting Pendleton.
So when you have like an open contract, so basically they just put you wherever you want. I mean, not wherever you want, wherever they want. And if you
Wherever
get
they
like
need
a
you, they're going to
contract,
put you if you're open contract. Yeah. So,
yeah, I
I
see.
mean, you could make the best of it, but, I mean, I don't think going in the Navy and, scraping the paint off pools of ships and painting it's anybody's dream. You
Yeah,
know?
you'll be busy. You'll stay
Yeah.
busy, and I'm sure you'll get some sun.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So, not my idea of fun though, but,
Kind of, yeah. So at least you're able to probably meet new people at the same time, though. So like, talk to me about. So obviously, you are in the finance space as well, and you're helping people secure retirement and all that good stuff. What was like the I guess build up to that? So because like the reason why I started, the AOA system is really one thing. The first thing is I saw my grandparents not plan effectively, and I was like, I have a marketing skill. I'm going to help you guys get in front of assets. And then therefore I wanted to impact a million people to have a great retirement planning experience through helping you guys. And so that was like my quick, I guess, build up just to that. What did it look like for you? What was that like? Obviously it wasn't your first job, you know, wasn't your first thing you
yeah.
started doing to
I
make money.
was,
What was the background on that before you got into finance?
so it's kind of funny when I got out of the Marine Corps, I sold life insurance for a little bit and long-term care. Wasn't really for me through Prudential, and then did some other things. And I was in the mortgage industry for about 12 years. And when I was 44, I was running a mortgage division for a bank in California. And basically, what happened is I got diagnosed with an illness from the VA. So I literally went in for a physical at the clinic, which is your doctor's office. I
Oh, what
went in for
happened?
a physical and a blood test, and that night I had the head of the emergency room, a commander from the ER from the Long Beach VA Hospital in Long Beach, California, call me and say, get your butt in here tonight. And I was about an hour myself from dealing with your friends in the mortgage business. And I said, Doc, I'll come in tomorrow. I'm down in Oceanside. And he says, listen, what I'm going to tell you. He goes, get your ass in here tonight. There may not be a tomorrow. Okay. So I, left, went up there and stuck me in an IV in my arm. I turned out I had really low potassium. So long story short, I was out of work for 3 years, lost my job. And I started and that's at 44. So at 47, I started over. I'm 57 now. And so you can imagine how terrifying starting over at 44 or 47 is.
Yeah,
And,
like that's reinventing yourself. That's huge. I mean, like I think people are discounting that. Like, guys, like you've been doing the thing you've been doing for so long. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but like just wanted to highlight that. Like reinventing yourself, that just tells you in itself like it's never too late to do that, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's either, I don't know, be homeless or figure out, you got to figure out what to do. And I really didn't know. So I started selling health insurance and supplemental insurance, and I did that for a few years and started selling life insurance, and then started getting more, certifications and knowledge behind me, like estate planning, asset protection, reducing taxes, retirement planning, that kind of stuff. And so just started learning more and just started progressing into doing more financial planning, not just like a piece of the pie, like selling a life insurance policy here, an annuity there. So that's kind of how I kind of fell into this. I didn't pick this. At 47, when I was trying to get back on track, figuring out what to do, I had to do a lot of research and figure out, how do I get back on track? How do I help myself? And so by doing that and learning that, I decided that, my calling, I guess, is to help other people and a lot of times avoid, getting in that position in the first place. At 44, I didn't think I was invincible, but I also didn't have a plan in place. Spending 3 years in the VA hospital, in and out, in and out, in and out, it can't work. It takes its toll on your finances, takes a toll on everything.
Yeah, like how did you
And
survive that, man? Like, I mean, like that. I think about that. Like, you're not working for what, 3 years? I mean,
yeah,
typically the VA takes care of their own a lot of times, but I've also heard the opposite of just things happening. I just
well,
they just disappear.
during that time, the VA was pretty good to me.
Yeah,
They cover everything. However, you still got your mortgage to pay or rent, whatever you have, you still got your bills to pay. And living in California wasn't cheap. So what ended up happening is when I got sick, we ended up getting divorced. And, she took half, I took half. And, you're living for that money, what you have. And, you're not going out and partying and having fun. You're just trying to survive. And during that time, I'm trying to do research and learn and figure out how to, start climbing that hill again. And that's what I'm doing. So, by learning a lot of things, and of course, I don't know anything. I've got an IMO that I work with, advisor firm, that's their logo there. I got a lot of smart people behind me that, smarter than me. So get a lot of support and help. But, my goal and purpose now is to help people to a better retirement, understand what options they have, and hopefully avoid some of the problems or pitfalls that can come up because a lot of times things happen in our life that are unplanned, and if you're not prepared for it, it can be pretty devastating.
yeah. Like, so I guess as far as like retirement plans go, right? Like, why do they fail? I guess why do they fall short is maybe the better term.
Well, so think about this: like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kentucky, second part of my life, I mean, and the other half in Minnesota. So
Okay,
one in
so
a very cold left side, and then very conservative. And so yeah,
so the point I'm making is, so I went to Morristown High School in Morristown, New Jersey, and I graduated in 1986. I was 18 when I graduated. When I was 16, I learned how to drive. And okay, par for the course back then, but they're still doing that same stupid stuff now. They should be teaching kids in high school much better, doing a much better job of teaching them what I'll just sum up as the good, bad, the ugly about finances. Then they go to college, they don't learn anymore, unless maybe they're a finance major, but you don't really learn anything. And we all learn the hard way, right? Whether you work, you go to college, you go in the service, we all learn the hard way about spending money or, good credit, bad credit, but it takes time to learn that. And so we're never really taught the process of, you know, um, we're only told save your money, plan for retirement. But what does that mean? How do you do it? Like there's no directional map to tell you how to do that. So people aren't really taught. And I always kind of explain it like this. when you think about, I think the real reason that everything's failing is when you think about like, I think the number's something like 74% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And so when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're just barely above water. You're probably maybe putting some money in your 401k. Your bank account's definitely not building. You're just skimming above the water. And so you don't think about things. But take that same person and let's say they get a raise and making, or a new job and they're making 200,000 a year. Okay, so they're probably maxing out their 401k. Uh, they're probably thinking the bubble's going off in their head and paying too much in tax. They're putting more money in their checking account at, zero, 1/10% of interest, thinking there's got to be a better option here. And then it just starts going from there. And so that's a much smaller part of the population that has, everyone has these issues. Everyone could use some tax breaks, or could use some planning, or whatever. It's just people, when they're in that position, they don't think, it's for them. And so this is why the other thing too is, 30 years ago well, my parents, maybe not yours, but my parents were working, it was traditionally moms at home with the kids, dad's working. He worked for 30, 35 years. He got a pension, had Social Security, everything's taken care of. And, life wasn't complicated. Now everything is so complicated today that, everything can affect each other. Talk about Social Security, you got to talk about taxes, right? We're talking about Social Security, you got Medicare premiums, you've got penalties like IRMA. Everything can affect each other.
You know what
Taxes,
comes to mind, Gerard, is like when one of my first jobs was working at a shoe store. It
right?
was just small, right? And that wage used to supply everything you're talking about with your parents, like family. Like I could go work at a shoe shop and be okay
Yeah.
paying rent, house, all those things. So when you brought that up, I just thought about that. But yeah, there is definitely a lot more to it nowadays, isn't there? And so continue, man. I mean, like how are people creating an income they can't maybe necessarily outlive, or maybe there's more to not just the income but the tax strategies you were talking about.
Yeah, so like I said, when you're talking retirement, there's so many things that come into play today. Um, you know, and when you talk about pensions, I mean, defined pension plans, which is, your employer puts into it, you have no say in what happens, what it's invested in. That's down to like 10% today. And so most people, that's why the 401k was, I think it was in the 70s, they came about. But, there's a lot of things that people aren't aware of. So, for example, a lot of people are just socking money away in their 401ks, their 457s, 403bs. So these are both qualified plans that the government you haven't paid tax on it yet. So think about this: when you go to work for a company, let's say over 30 years you work there, and I know that's not traditional today, but just as in the example, you go to work for a company for 30 years and you put $300,000 into your 401k. Well, you got a tax deduction at that time. You weren't taxed on the money yet. Why does Uncle Sam do that? Because he doesn't want to tax you on 300,000. 30 years later, when that money grew to, let's say, 1.5 million, and then you're forced to take RMDs, which are required minimum distributions, Uncle Sam wants to tax you on 1.5 million. So
Boom, tax bomb.
yeah, and I also see a lot of people not diversifying with other types of, those are tax deferred accounts, maybe tax free, like tax value life insurance, a Roth IRA, things of that sort, or even taking advantage of some type of tax deductions. There are programs out there where we can reduce people's taxes with. But a lot of people just aren't aware of these things. And this is why I do live workshops here in Las Vegas. I do your webinar system so we can get this information out so people can understand, that they have options and what are them. some of the options. A lot of times they have questions that they don't have answers to, and they're looking for answers. So this is pretty much why we do what we do.
Yeah, because like another thing too, like as far as when you're planning with someone and you find those like the hidden, because you briefly talked about just now, like the hidden impact of RMDs, like what's the difference between like obviously there's the hit impact of RMDs, but what about the IRAs? Is it because it's also typically tax deferred as well, right? When you're
Yeah.
putting that,
So for example, um, you know, you retire and you got $1 million in your 401k, your IRA, your TSP, 403b, 457. Do you have $1 million? No, because whatever tax bracket you're in, that's Uncle Sam's portion, right? And so a lot
yeah,
of times we see people just sucking money away in these qualified accounts and not looking at other options. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to put money in there, but what I'm saying is, sometimes when people do financially well later down the road, maybe with a brokerage account or a Roth and some other things, maybe they don't need the money in that qualified account. They want to save it for a legacy for their kids or their grandchildren. Well, when RMDs come around at whatever age, they're forced to take it, they have to take those required minimum distributions. And so they're forced to take it. There is no if, and, or but. You're forced to take it. And so sometimes when they do have to pull those RMDs, they have more money now. So more taxable money, more taxable income. Sometimes it puts them in a higher tax bracket. They pay more taxes, and all they're doing is spending money down on the retirement account that they didn't want the money in the first place. So effective planning these days is really takes a coordination of looking at all your income sources, your age, your life expectancy, a ton of other things, because there's so many things at play.
when you were talking about the 401k as well, and at the time it was created, I had a quick question. I can't remember where I read it in the book. I just wanted to like just I didn't want to forget about it. But what was created during like the Great Depression? You know how like when the banks crashed and they got people back in the markets, was it the 401k or was it something
Now,
else?
so 401k was actually invented in the 80s, not the 70s. It was
Yeah,
invented in the
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's
80s.
what I thought you said too. I was like,
The,
huh, what was that thing? Yeah.
I forget the guy's name that invented it, but he actually calls it, forget what he calls it now. He calls it something about the devil or something because while there's good intention in it, like I said, a lot of people are just socking a ton of money. I had clients I met with last week that had $4 million in qualified accounts. And so the RMDs, they have good amount of money coming from Social Security and their rental properties, like well than more than enough to live off of. And they're forced to take over $100,000 in RMDs because they didn't plan ahead years ago. Maybe no one, maybe they didn't meet with anyone to tell them that this is going to be a problem down the road. And now here they are with RMDs, or they'll take RMDs, and there's not much you can do about it. So I mean there
Yeah.
is, but it's not as effective as planning ahead. So back to your question about the Great Depression, I have no idea. All I know is the life insurance companies bailed out a lot of even the government, and like for example, I think it was J.C. Penney who started all his life insurance, or the cash value to keep the money going to pay his employees so they could keep their paychecks and their insurance, which is pretty noble.
Yeah, that's crazy because I was reading this book. It was also it was Lords of Easy Money, but it taught me about the printing of money and quantitative easing. I hope I impressed you with that, by the way. Quantitative easing. like um
I didn't get that far in depth with it, but yeah, I mean, it's a good read, but that can be very complicated stuff. You know,
yeah, I mean, because like you're just going into like, it's like because going back to just obviously the money always being printed and inflation and how it's being affected today and you know, thankfully like you may have I think you said you may have some smart strategies for us for like Social Security and like estate planning, because all things considered, like you said, that guy is getting $100,000 with RMDs just for being successful.
Yeah.
And then all things considered,
Um,
it's like what are like how are you helping these guys, with things along those lines?
well, first thing is, like I said, you have to take a look at everything. You have to really have the whole picture of their financial picture of what their goals are. Because, when you have taxable money, which is your bank account, money market CDs, you've already paid tax on them, right? You got your paycheck, you put it in the bank. Then you got your tax deferred, which is all the qualified accounts, IRAs, 401ks. And then you got your tax free accounts, which, tax free life insurance, um, Roth IRA. You withdraw money from all these accounts changes how much money you end up with, changes how you're taxed, and most people don't know that, we use a provisional income formula for Social Security. So, um, which only taxes half of your Social Security money.
Wow.
If you make more money, it can go up to 85%, which means that 85% of your Social Security can be taxed at whatever tax rate you're at. Not saying the tax rate's not 85%. Okay. But there's strategies we can use to pull money from certain accounts at different times to make your planning more efficient. And so that's a strategy that most planners will use. If you just have a brokerage guy at, I'm going to say Merrill Lynch, but not trying to put on that, that's what came to mind. They may be a planner. If they're not, they're just bringing money. They have no idea about retirement planning, taxes, you
Is it more
know.
cookie cutter? Like I guess you could say it's like here's their process, and then it's like more of a cookie cutter solution. And that is that why
So,
it results in that? Because they're big, right?
yeah, I mean, it depends on what their goal is. If, the problem too is a lot of people will have a broker, right? They put their money in whatever, you know, um,
Whatever you
whatever.
say, man, I'm gonna do. Like one of
Yeah.
those.
So they'll put their money in whatever, whoever it is, their brokerage account, and their money's growing, right? They talk to the broker once a year or whatever. But when you get close to retirement, we don't want to. That broker, first of all, is not typically going to sell other products like annuities or life insurance. They just don't offer that. These are other things that we look at close to retirement or after retirement to make sure that we're protecting some of your money. And so if you have, a broker that he's only, you know, his only concern is growing your money, um, you know, when you're very close to retirement, that's a problem because if they're not aware of taxes, Medicare, IRMA penalties, Social Security, for example, there's penalties if you are before your FRA. So FRA is full retirement. So let's just take you and me, both born after 1960. Our full retirement age is 67, according to the government. You can retire anytime you want. You can take Social Security anytime between age 62 and age 70. But if you take it at 62, anytime before your FRA and you're working, you get penalized. So, for example, I want to say it's 24,650. Don't quote me on that. In 2026, so the number goes up every year slightly.
Okay.
In this year, if you are collecting Social Security from age 62 before your FRA at 67, every dollar you make over whatever that limit is, 24,650, they penalize you $1 for every $2 over. And they hold that money until you turn FRA, and then they sum it all up.
And
So,
what's FRA stand for?
so full retirement age.
Full retirement age. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
So a lot of people aren't aware of stuff like this. Like, somebody, they got their brokerage account, and they got their money growing there, and maybe they're going down to part-time work, right? And maybe they're making 100,000 a year, and they're going to stay working part time, making 40 grand a year, and then they're going to take Social Security as supplement. And they ask their broker, yeah, it's fine. The broker doesn't know, and it's not to pick on them. It's not their specialty. More my specialty is on the other side, where close to retirement or in retirement, we want to make sure that we're protecting, that money. So another 2008 happens, they're not financially devastated.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember moving from. Oh man, I remember that. It was a weird time for sure. I mean, I was definitely like younger, but still, like seeing how my parents and all that stuff happened. Like just moving from. 'Cause that's when I moved from Minnesota to Kentucky, and just hearing about like, because my dad's an accountant now, and I'd hear different scenarios. But what I appreciate what you said there, man, is like it's not the brokers necessarily. It's not that it's their specialty. And I also wanted to call out that you talked about, earlier in this conversation, just about how you started out doing health and life and then eventually got your securities. It's really cool that you said what you said, because you can see, you understand both sides of it. And then it's more of a collaborative thing. Cause like, as people are like exploring like who to work with and this, that, and the other, I just hear a lot of like bad mouthing a lot of times, like this XYZ person
Yeah.
doesn't care, or this person did that or the other. And like it's just stuff that I hear about. So when people are like looking to, when they look to work with you or anybody, it's just what happens. And I think what you said really does stand out. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really, really good
One
thing.
thing I can point out, I'm not securities licensed. Advisor sure I have someone that works on that.
I
I will get
apologize.
that like
Yes.
yeah, I'll get that license, but I always tell clients too that if they have an advisor, great, because if you've got an advisor that's handling your brokerage account, that's great because I know you're serious about growing your money and now it's my job to protect your money. So what I'll tell him is that's great you have an advisor, but your advisor doesn't do what I do, and I don't do what they do. So
Yeah.
we can work together. I just tell them if you're open to having me on your financial team, I can help protect some of that money. And what I will tell you is this is what will happen. If you're a client and you've got $1 million in your brokerage account, and I say Kyle, and now you're retiring, and we came across each other and had a conversation to work together. And I say, Kyle, we take a look at your financial statement, say all your money's at risk in the market. If 2008 happens again, you lose half your money. How do you feel about that? Right. So the problem is when I show you something like maybe a fixed index annuity, maybe we take 400,000 and put it in an annuity at no cost, no fee, guaranteed no loss. So your money will grow. Now, not as fast as maybe in the market, but you don't have the stress of losing money either. Now, when you go back to your broker, I'll tell this to clients. Your broker's going to say that's a bad idea. Now, why do you think that is?
I would say their focus is on growing the
I'll
income.
tell you why. And the broker makes it about them at that time. Because if I take 400,000 of that $1 million and I put in an annuity, he's not managing $1 million anymore. He's managing 600,000. So he's concerned that his paycheck is going to be less. And
Oh,
I tell clients now, whose best interest does he really have? If you go to your broker and say, listen, I'm going to move $400,000, I'm worried about the market, I want to protect some of my money with a guarantee that he cannot do. And if he tells you that's a bad idea, you need to fire that broker, period. Because he has his best interest, which is technically there should be a fiduciary putting the client's best interest first. That's not really what happens. So, not here to badmouth the broker, but people that make this mistake and they feel bad, my answer to them is, how bad are you going to feel when you knew what to do, you didn't do it because you didn't want to confront the broker, and now you lost 20, 30, 40%. So
over
again,
life,
not to
over life
badmouth
savings
them,
too.
but
Like I
that
mean,
is what happens.
yeah. Well, it's like there's a point where you draw the line, right? Like I mean,
Yeah.
you can't stand on. I mean, what do they say? You can't serve two masters, right? Like gotta. Gotta focus on the one. So
Well, they
yeah,
can. I mean, they can work with both of us. Like I said, I'm not here to destroy that
right.
um,
No, I'm saying it's
relationship.
more of a a stand on. Hey, like it's good to be collaborative in that situation, but it's like just like in our program, the webinar program, right? Like there's a panic rule when not to turn off something, when to turn on something.
Yeah,
As an example, it's like same thing is here. It's like, hey, what you know, so that way you have the data to make a business decision rather than an emotional one. And
yeah.
that's what I was trying to pull out. I think that's fantastic what you're saying. So overall, man, like as far as what would you say the biggest gap in the market is today when you're trying to bring someone in, work with them? You take maybe a handful of your clients. Is there a pattern you're overall seeing that you would
I
like to
would
maybe
say
pass on to someone?
I
Mm-hmm.
would say the biggest thing that's overlooked is asset protection. So, and most people think, well, my money's at so and so, he's on top of it. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is think of the people who've worked hard and they made money. They might have $1 million in their brokerage account, right? Maybe they've got a rental house, they've got a boat, an RV, a motorcycle, right? A teenage driver. And all those assets, if they're not properly structured for protection, one mistake, your teenage driver taking the boat out, having an accident, having an accident in your RV, hitting someone tripping down the stairs of your rental property, or getting sued for whatever. When those assets aren't protected, then everything you have is fair game, right? I think that's the biggest thing today. Like I'll ask clients sometimes, like, oh, my broker's great, blah, blah, blah. Not to pick on brokers, but,
There it is.
my
No.
broker's great, I got $1 million and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. How is that money titled? What do you mean? Is it in your name? Like, of course it's in my name. Why isn't it an LLC? Because and then I ask them this. I'm guilty of this 100%. How many times a week do you text and drive? Pretty much every day? Or look at your phone, fiddle with your phone while you're driving? Almost every day? So
Yeah. Of
texting
course.
and driving. What's that?
No, I was just agreeing with you, man.
Yeah,
Like I'm following. I'm following.
yeah.
Yeah.
Texting and driving is 6 times more dangerous than drunk driving. The stats, like accidents happen more. And so
Yeah.
when you think about all of us, right, we tinker with it. Even if you're using your phone and you answer your phone hands free in your car, you still like that. You take your eyes off the road for a second, answer the call. But the point is, we're all guilty of it. And one thing that can happen, accident like that, and let's say you didn't look and you ran over a bicyclist and killed him. Well, go buy $1 million in your brokerage account because that's fair game. Go buy a rental house, that's fair game. Go buy RV, that's fair game. So learning how to structure those entities, asset protection wise, so if something does happen, like for example, let's say the RV, you hit somebody in the RV and the RV is in an LLC, a properly structured LLC, two-person LLC. All they can do is sue the LLC. They can't touch because the LLC owns the motorhome. You technically don't. So I would say that's between, I wouldn't even say wealthy people, but even people that have done, I mean, how many people do you know have hobbies? They got expensive motorcycles,
Oh,
boats, you know,
guns. I'm in
69
Kentucky, man.
Camry,
Guns.
whatever. So, I mean, this
Yeah.
is, I would say, by far the biggest problem I see that most advisors aren't even talking about.
And so, is this like a part of estate planning as well? Because, like, do you work? Is that
So,
about
good
that a little bit?
question. So, I get that a lot. Like, just the clients that I talked to last week, they have 6 rental properties and they're all in their revocable living trust. And they were told that they're protected in their revocable living trust. They are not protected. 100% not. So an estate plan is really something that, like I say to people, if you have a house, a spouse, kids, grandchildren, a brokerage account, rental properties, it could even be a $500,000 wine collection, whatever. And you're married,
I
you
forgot
probably
about
should.
wine, man.
What's that?
Yes. I just forgot about wine, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a side conversation, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
But so all those things you would probably be beneficial to have an estate plan, and that way you can manage your assets still while you're alive, and then when you're dead, things get distributed the way you want. Most people think that if they have a will, that they're good. Well, a will goes to probate. If you have nothing, meaning die intestate, you have no will, no trust, nothing. And then what happens is, so with that and with a will, everything you own goes to probate, and then your estate has to pay the court system, have to pay an attorney, and that takes time. So just imagine, right? Your spouse passed away, you're the second to pass away, and you've got this $1 million home. Let's say that maybe you owe 250,000 on, right? And you've got a 25-year-old just got out of college, a few years, is working, and you die and leave them the house. Well, if there's no trust, that goes into probate. Probate, depending on the state, could take over a year. How's that kid going to make $2,000 payments on top of everything else they're doing to keep that house, pay the property tax, all that stuff? So having a trust is very helpful. And I always tell people this, if you're elderly and, or even not elderly, but you live in an apartment, you're living off of Social Security, you don't need a trust. You have nothing to trust. But what you should have is power of attorney for healthcare and power of attorney for finances. Um, because if you don't, and there's a problem, it's like having a car accident on Sunday, trying to get insurance on Monday. So the very least, I recommend having powers of attorney. But an estate plan, like a trust, I think is a great idea if you have assets and you want to pass down to whomever you want to pass it to. So what I was talking about, asset protection, is different. That's not a revocable living trust.
Okay, got it. Because at least to that point, I mean, I know you get to see like more about their current situation from like your perspective to help them out with other things in the estate plan, but like, so asset protection is going to be probably a part of the conversation that leads into an estate plan, is what you're probably saying in this case.
Yeah, because usually when they have assets, yeah, it's just two different ways of protecting. That's all.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's awesome. I learn more about you guys every day. But yeah, so ultimately we're able to highlight, get saving first and foremost, a tax deferred retirement from passive 401k, because and correct me if I'm wrong, like people can lose money in their 401ks as well,
Yeah.
right? Like
So,
that's a thing too. So that's another reason why they need to meet with you.
yeah, so think about this. Like when you get started to work for the company, right? You, I got blurry there for a second. When you go to work for a company, right? You fill out your 401k info, and you look at this, go, what is this? And you go up to the HR person, and they're like, sorry, by law, I can't help you. My hands are tied. So what do? You go back and just check, check, check. You just start clicking boxes, right? And through the years, maybe you're on top of it, checking things and look at things, but most people are not. They look at their statement, they'll pull up their statement and this, and they'll just, oh, I lost money, crap, or I made money good, and that's it. But they're not actively managing, so they're not taught that either. But most people aren't actively managing it, so a lot of times they can lose money. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because most people aren't aware. I don't know if we talked about this, but if they're 59 and a half and older, that they can move some of the money in that retirement account, that qualified account, and they can roll it over into an IRA, no cost, no penalty, still be
Oh,
tax
no, I did
deferred.
not know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah, so
cool.
they can so I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you're 62 and you think you're going to retire at 65. That's the plan. And maybe think about what's going on in the world right now. We got a Ukraine war, we've got the us with Iran war and all kinds of crap going on in the world.
Yes.
Oil,
Yes.
you know, so the market could crash at any time. No one has the crystal ball on them. And if you're 62 right now or 60 or whatever age, and you know you're going to retire in a few years and you're just praying to God that another 2008 doesn't happen, well, if you're 59 and a half and older and still working, we could take some of that money and roll it over into the IRA. Like I said, no penalties, no fees. We just roll it from company to company, and you can protect some of that money. And the reason you want to do that is so if the market does turn again, you don't lose 20, 30, 40% of your money, or whatever you did protect is 100% protected in an annuity, like a fixed index annuity, um, and whatever's still in the market, is still susceptible to the market. But I paint the picture like this with clients. Um, I remember what I was doing the morning of 9/11. Like all my family's back east, New Jersey, New York,
Right.
and I was actually going down to San Diego. I live in California at the time for an EMT course I was taking, and so um, I was down. I was in the morning just having my breakfast and everything, and got a phone call from the East Coast. Turned on the TV, so I remember exactly what I was doing. So I paint a picture like this, and this, at your younger age, you probably don't remember. Maybe you do, but most
I was
people
playing
my
with
age,
my toys in the living room in Minnesota, man. It was like my birthday's September 8th.
right,
So like, yeah, I just get, I was probably playing with my like Toy Story Woody doll
right,
and my Michael Jordan
yeah,
Space Jam. And that's what I
right.
remember. Those are the two things
But
that
if
like
you're, it's good to remember. But so
but
where I'm
that's
going
it.
with that is, I paint the picture of clients like this. Imagine you're still working and you came downstairs and having your coffee before you go to work, turn on the TV, and another major market crash, and your $1 million automatically went to 500,000. That's like a self-induced heart attack, right? Now think of the next scenario where you wake up, you come downstairs, have your coffee, and you only moved for, let's just say you moved half of it, 500,000 into a fixed index annuity that you can't lose money on. And now you know that instead of losing 500,000, you're not happy with losing money, but losing 250,000 is a lot better than losing 500,000, right? So at least having the knowledge that, hey, I did something about it. I protected my money where I can't lose it. Okay, I'm going to stress less over this now. So I try to paint that picture so people understand that there's an option that they can do it. And by the way, if they have an old 401k, 403b, one of those, they can roll it over into an IRA because the strategies are better to invest in. There's better options, and it's just better tax wise. So, for example, let's say someone has two IRAs. Over the years, they're working at different companies. Let's say you have two IRAs and a brokerage account.
Okay.
So, technically, you have to take RMDs from every account and pay them. But because they're all IRAs and a brokerage account, you can pull from one account to pay all your RMDs, right? So
Okay. Kind of a
let's say
consolidation.
you've, what's that?
Kind of consolidation, basically, is
Yeah,
what
so
you're.
you can consolidate. Now let's say you've got an IRA, a 401k, 457, and a brokerage account. You have to take out three out of four. So the IRA and the brokerage account, you can take out one for those. The 401k and the whatever I said, 403b or 457, whatever
Yeah.
it is, you have to take them out separately. And that's where people get hammered because they screw up. Penalty used to be 50%, but the Social Security Act 2.0 dropped it to 25%. So
Isn't that
you'll,
crazy though?
yeah,
God
you'll still
bless.
have to pay on top of what you had to take out in the first place and pay tax. And then you got to take out another 25% on top of that.
Dude, I just think about like all the hard because like we're just talking about these percentage numbers, but like I don't know if people are like I mean people have to realize that that's like it's not just 25% or 50%, it's like half your life, if not more.
So,
Like of
yeah,
time and
but
energy.
people
So
don't know this until it happens, right?
yeah, crazy. So when can people so move you're able so when you said you were 59, you can roll things over, you know,
59 and a half.
59 and a half,
Still working.
59.5. And so when we get into, I will say keeping that money safe while you're not working anymore and trying to enjoy those golden years, like typically, is it around 65 to where you can keep it safe or move it a little bit more without penalties? Or what's that look
Um,
like?
so you can move that money. You can move it anytime you want. If you move it before 59 and a half, you pay tax on it like you would anyway, but there's a 10% penalty. So after 59 and a half, you move that money, there's no penalty. And then you can take withdrawals whenever you need it, but you'll still pay tax on it.
So walk me through, I guess, the phases of like retirement, if you don't mind. So like if someone's like listening or watches this video and they're 59 and a half, for example, or maybe it's someone that is maybe a little bit older in their 60s, maybe it's set, like let's go by decades if you don't mind. 60, 70, 80. Let's just stop there. Like, what does that look like?
It's kind of hard because, you know, think about take 10 people, right? They look different.
Okay, yeah.
They, I can go on and on. Different age, different look, color hair, color skin.
And health, probably too.
What's
Like,
it?
I was gonna say different health too.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
yeah.
it's really hard to do that. But I will tell
Okay,
you the easiest way I'd say kind of from 30,000 high level is, at 50 you're still learning, in your 50s you're still learning. Obviously, you want to be putting as much as you can towards retirement, paying stuff down. In your 60s, you're more likely, in retirement at some point in your 60s. So now there's the mindset, even in late 50s, early 60s, there's that mindset of let's not be so aggressive with our investing. Let's protect some of our money. Because, things happen. You turn 65, and if you do get into Medicare at the time, now you're on Medicare. So the paycheck stops, right? You still the paycheck stops you, but you're still paying taxes. And now whatever money you earn, that's the scary part, is now whatever money you earned, that's what you're living off of. But you're still paying taxes. Your life insurance, your health insurance isn't subsidized by whatever company you work for. You're paying the Medicare on your own. You're paying your healthcare expenses on your own. So a lot of things change at that point. And I kind of like to sum that up with I use in my workshops Mount Everest, right? So you look
okay,
at Mount Everest, most people don't die on the way up. Most people die in the danger zone, and forget what the death zone, which is the very top point. And if you're not out of the death zone by 2 p.m., your chance of dying goes up significantly higher because it gets dark, gets colder, gets windier, there's less air. So just like the transition of going up the mountain and coming down the mountain, retirement's kind of the same way, right? When you go up the mountain, things are different than when you go down the mountain. When you go down the mountain, people they go, great, I'm retired. It's over. It's not over because you've got 20, 30 years to live, and you better make that money last and make the right decisions to make that money last. And there's a lot of unknowns out there. Long-term care, long-term care right now in a semi-private facility, average throughout the United States about 114,000. So think about that now. In 20 years from now, you're 55 or 60, right? Let's say 60. In 20 years, you're going to need long-term care at 80. So think about this. It goes to, I have it in my slide. That's why I know. 20 years from now, with 3% interest, that's 230 grand a year. And the average male is in a facility, average 2.2 years. A woman is 3.7, that's 850 grand. right?
God,
And God forbid, think about this, God forbid you have Alzheimer's, because that could be 6, 10, 12 years. 8 years in Alzheimer's is about 1.8 million on those stats. And that's enough to destroy anybody's financial plan. So we got to think about those things ahead of time, plan ahead of time. That's the biggest thing you can do. The biggest risk is doing nothing. And what's kind of sad, think about this. Every single person goes on vacation. You figure out the cost, right? You know what the cost for the flight is, the hotel, the meals, you have everything budgeted. You know what the cost is. But only a small percentage of people actually know what their retirement plan is going to be. How much money, there's the income gap, right? If you need $100,000 a year to live off of retirement, and your social security and whatever you have, maybe a pension, is 70,000, let's say. All right, so your income gap's 30 grand. It's not rocket science to figure out 30 grand. But what's not easy is figuring out how to make that 30 grand of guaranteed income every year that you won't outlive and survive if you have a long-term care event. And I can tell you the clients that we do help fill out that income gap with guaranteed income. So no matter what happens in the market, their brokerage account might go up, go down, but they got that guaranteed income. They sleep a lot better at night. I can promise you that. So
yeah, it's
that's
good to
the
know we
direct
have a
feedback.
plan in place. And so the best way to like get probably a plan in place is going to. Do you have a site or website?
They can, I would say probably if you could put a link in my Calendly somehow, I can give that to you. But if they could just
We'll have some links
schedule,
of your social media too in the somewhere in our descriptions as well, so they'll be able to reach out as well.
you need me to just send that to you after?
For sure, guys. We'll
Okay.
totally get that whole calendar link out for sure,
Okay.
so that way you can
Yeah,
keep
so
contact.
what I recommend is just schedule on my Calendly. It's a 30-minute call if we need that much time. And, I just kind of understand a little bit about what they're looking for, what they're sometimes it's just questions. And if there's some opportunity where I think that there's things that we can help them with, then but that we'll have a second meeting and I'll kind of show them some of the things that I think we can help them with. And then once they understand that, we have a third meeting to implement.
Guys, I've seen his tools he has to make things simple and easy to make it to where even like a second grader can understand it. It was amazing for him to show me just different scenarios outside of this call as well. And trust me, like you'll be able to have the opportunity to have that sense of clarity you're looking for. Think about this, like Gerard, he shared, when he was in the Marine Corps, he had a health scare, put him out of work for over 3 years. And then, first and foremost, like imagining that happening and having to reinvent yourself at 47, and then building right up into getting multiple certifications, learning more about helping people just like you guys get a better retirement plan together. So, I mean, I'm learning things. I'm only 30 and I'm still improving my plan as well. Obviously, I have little kids that are under 5. So now that's obviously important. We got life insurance and stuff like that. It's only a matter of time before we do our own estate plan and things like that too, man. So I already know who I'm going to be going to for that. Um, and so, guys, take a time and book a call on his calendar. And Gerard, thank you so much for taking the time to have this discussion with me. It's been amazing. And it was also just good to learn more about your background, man. Is there any last messages or any last thoughts you'd like to give the community?
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on here. Had a good time. The only thing I'd say is you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't have a plan. We can certainly help them with the plan. We'll take a look at where they're at, where they're trying to accomplish. And it does happen sometimes. Sometimes we have people who look at their whole scenario like, you're good. You are good as long as something doesn't change, like, having a gambling problem and spending all your money, something crazy like that. Like, if they're good, we'll tell them they're good. But the main thing is, have somebody do a financial checkup, whether it's me or someone, because you want to know. I always say like this, like, you know, do you want to know when you have stage 4 cancer? Or do you want to know stage 1 where you've got, a much better chance of living? Because stage 4, you're screwed. So, and that's the same thing with retirement. So many people, like I said, they go on vacation, they know the numbers, but they don't take time. They're too busy in their life to look at the numbers for retirement and actually, first of all, understand here's where we're at and here's where we need to be.
Priorities.
How do we get from where we're at now to where we need to be? And that's where someone like myself and my team can help them get there. And by the way, there's the companies we work with. There's no cost, there's no charge. They never pay me, so I get paid directly from the companies that we work with. So it's like going to buy a car, right? You go buy a car, you talk to the salesman, maybe he brings his manager over, and then you go talk to the finance guy. You're not paying them separately, it's all built in. So that's how I get paid directly from the companies that we work with.
All the support, all in house, one stop shop type of thing, you would
Yeah,
say?
there's really not anything we can't do. I mean, like I said, I don't do health insurance anymore or supplemental. We can educate clients. Sometimes I educate them on, what to do. And I tell them, if you're looking for a plan, let me look over it and I kind of explain some things for you. But I have a guy that I refer to.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. That way you
Yeah,
can focus on the financial checkups and then planning accordingly.
100%.
Awesome. Well, Gerard, you're the man. I hope everyone got some awesome value. I know I did, of course. But guys, take the time, look them up on the socials, grab that link to book a call, and let us know what you got from it. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, guys.
we should do. I mean, I got still hours to talk, so if you want
Of
to do
course.
another podcast, let me know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that'd be fantastic. I would like to kind of do more so on maybe what it looks like to be a successful financial guy just like yourself, you know. And so that'd be a really really good one. So guys, make sure you guys look out for that so you identify even further what makes an amazing financial
Well, I need
fiduciary.
your email. I'll send it in the chat in AOA. I'll send that info
Perfect.
you want. All right, Kyle.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me on.
Here we go.